You already took the first jab.
Oh, come on, man. It's like it's totally a recommended starting time. My favorite though, I voy, no? And you're like, you're still at home. What do you mean, ahí voy? You're no te has vestido, no te has duchado. Like, what do you mean, ahí voy? No, no, nos vemos en 10 minutos.
Bendito. Okay, hold on a second. So first, let me just say hi to anybody that might be watching this episode of Primo Real Estate, the Primo Real Estate Channel. I am your one of your many hosts to this channel, which today we only have two. I am Jerry Pujals with Homestead Real Estate in the beautiful Napa Valley, graced by my co-host.
Unleashed. Happy New Year, everyone. Carlos Salazar here, our real estate broker and owner of Zold Realty Group in punctual Miami, Florida.
Let's go. Let's go. With our wonderful guest, Trevor Rose, who I've known since he was, Trevor, I think I've known you since you were 13 or 14 years old, but just so I stay true and not lie, you may have been 15. I don't know.
I don't know. You tell me the year and I can actually confirm. When do you think you met the family?
Well, you know, your one of your uncle was, get this, Carlos. Trevor's uncle was my warehouse manager at my produce company in the San Francisco produce market.
Oh, wow.
And then I would hear of Trevor's mother from him because you know, she was a super highly respected and regarded real estate broker in the Napa Valley, probably one of the youngest real estate brokers ever. I mean, I think she had her broker's license at 18 or 19, and then she had a real estate company called Rose Realty back in the 80s.
I think she was 20 when she opened Rose Realty.
She was 20 when she opened Rose Realty, and it was a high-powered office in Napa. A super cerebral, smart person who then became the managing broker of Coldwell Banker Brokers of the Valley, which is where I did my 20-something years. And she's still, I have, let's say I have 6 best friends, and out of the 6, she's one of them, and still a mentor, somebody that if I'm stuck with life, I still can throw out the bat line and she still come to my rescue. So, and Trevor has a high regard for his own mother because, like you, Carlos, his mother is super smart, hardworking, and all things fair, honest, and integrity. Which is, you know, I'm just going to go a little deeper into this for a second. So, you know, if you see a guy before you, unlike some of the people we know in Florida, in South Florida, where you and I grew up, that may lack some integrity, I'm going to give Robin Rose the badge for the person that taught me what integrity means. And that's how I feel about Trevor's mother. Then Trevor comes around, and he is this guy kind of like you and me, you know. Trevor, Carlos and I are surrounded by Joshua trees. All of our cousins are like over 6'2", 6'3", and he and I are like the only ones with like an average height syndrome. And you fall into that too, Trevor. You know, you fall into the average height syndrome. But one thing that I found interesting, Trevor was the guy that, even though he suffered from average height syndrome, he made it to the basketball team in high school because Trevor was that guy. Trevor was also the guy that would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and be in school at 6 a.m. to do early flights because his GPA was better than everybody's, you know, and that's who Trevor Rose is. And I remember back in the day when title companies would give us like spivs and like movie tickets and all this, a lot of times I would give those to Robin so Robin can give them to Trevor because Trevor's report card came in again and it was all A's, you know. Carlos has 3 sons, Trevor. 2 out of the 3 are attorneys now. Right, Carlos? Am I
Yeah,
screwing?
the oldest is an attorney, 28-year-old, 22-year-old's in second year law school, and the baby is in studying to be a civil engineer, but he's going to go to law school after that. So, as I always tell everyone I know in the viewing public, I'm positive they're not my children. And I always warn them when that stranger comes to the house and knocks on the door, that could be your real father, do not open the door.
Yeah, I feel similar with my daughters sometimes. They're I mean they're very good looking and just like their mom. I'm like, well, you're lucky you don't look like your dad.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, and my cousin, my cousin's mother was my godmother, Trevor. My godmother, again, another person that integrity was the most important thing. And one day offline, I'll tell you much more about my godmother because it's just, yeah, just a gift to our family.
And is Carlos a cousin on
Yeah,
your
I knew
dad's
you were
side or
gonna ask
mom's
that.
side?
Yeah, so he would be on the from Mariel. He came off. Carlos came off of the Mariel embargo. No, he didn't. Carlos, you know,
I
we
was there. I was there with Tony Montana at the detention base, and you know, lived through all that with him. You know, what can I say?
Revenga.
Revenga! Remember that?
So
Did you watch Scarface, Trevor?
so Carlos is an hacer.
Hacer.
Okay.
Not really. I practice a lot of secular racism where over here,
Yeah.
where I try to you know, put my people in a good light. You know,
Yeah.
so we try to stay away from the acere molina and all that sort of que volar, hacer, and then you know, Cubans for the most part, whether no matter from what socioeconomic background you come from. I don't know if you knew this or not, Trevor, since you have a little insight into this stereotype of Hispanics and Cubans being late, which I've never heard nor even understand that. But anyways, there's also a very common thing that within Hispanics that they, especially Cubans, where we automatically assign you a degree. So, for example, if you and I are friends, Trevor, and I see you, doctor, or el licenciado, profesor, right? Isn't that like a crazy thing? It's really interesting. I don't know. I guess it's a way for them to convey esteem, right, to the person. You know, instead of calling them basurero, asqueroso, you know, it could go either way. It could go either way. You know.
I've been called all those things in different degrees too over over many years.
Hey, Trevor, can you tell Carlos a little bit about your stint with professional baseball and what you were doing going to the Dominican Republic with those guys? And I find some of those stories so fascinating. And you know, the
Yeah.
spiffs and the things that you would have to try to give those guys so you can keep them playing baseball because they couldn't even afford, you know, these guys can't afford a baseball glove. I mean, it's so sad.
So yeah, I started working with California sports management right out of law school because I was the only one in my class that didn't want to go graduate law school and just go work at some high-powered law firm in San Francisco. I always wanted to work in sports, and I saw law as just a vehicle to get me there. Whereas I think most people were like, I'm going to become a lawyer so I can just go work at a firm and try to make a lot of money. So I did that. I got involved with the sports agency, and I was the only one that was fluent in Spanish. And my sports agency specialized in, they actually had an academy that they owned in the Dominican Republic where they would train all these kids, typically around 14, 15, 16, and try to get them huge signing bonuses with the major league teams. And then of course they would take a cut and then we would work with them through the minor leagues. And then eventually the hope was that once they became big leaguers, then the typical percentage that a major league baseball agent would make is 3 or 4 or 5% on a negotiated big league contract. So I got involved. I got sent down to the Dominican Republic several times to work with the younger kids and take a look at the academy and see how things were going. And of course, while we were down there, I also had relationships with the established.
Whoa. Where are you going with this?
I don't know.
What kind
What
of
do you?
relationships were you?
Oh, professional relationships, but
Oh,
I certainly yeah, there were some unsavory things that agents are asked.
bachata involving bachata.
Oh, I I remember going to the Dominican Republic the first time, and you would wake up. It's like 8 a.m. and all you hear through the streets, there's like guaguas con bachata a todo volumen, and it's like the entire city. That's all you hear. So, uh, and while we were down there, I would go and make visits and try to take care of our established clients. And we had a few that were big leaguers. One of them was Rookie of the Year in 2010 with the Texas Rangers, and Neftali Feliz. And other big guys that ended up making it to the big leagues. So that was kind of crazy. As part of my job also, I learned how to cold call, which you can appreciate as a realtor. One of the things that we would do is we would get this almanac of where all the minor leaguers would stay on the road when they traveled through like the Midwest, right? These small cornfield towns in the Midwest. And they'd be at like La Quinta Inn or something. And we'd have our book of like top prospects. Like these are the guys we're going to try to recruit for our agency. So I would call like La Quinta Inn in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay. And you say, okay, La Quinta Inn, how can I direct your call? And you'd say, hi, can I please talk to Hector Rodriguez, please? And they'd go, 1 second. And you'd hear, ring, 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 ring. Aló. Hola, me llamo Trevor. Hablo de la agencia de California Sports Management. ¿Usted tiene un abogado ya? ¿Cómo consiguió este número? That's always their first question is like, how did you find me? Who are you? Right? So you had to very quickly develop a trust rapport with these people. And I ended up, out of one of those calls, interestingly, I ended up signing a player who was in AA at the time, minor league baseball, Venezuelan. And a few years later, I had already left the industry and started my own practice here in Napa for various reasons, which if you want, we can get into later. But a few years later, he ended up signing a $32 million contract. And I remember seeing that like on the ESPN ticker. And I did the math real quick. I was like, 5%. Oh. Oh well.
That's why I think the main thing you probably were missing in that business model is that you should try to adopt them, not just work with them, right? Which would
or have them adopt me.
Yeah,
Better
well,
yet.
the adoption works well, and it'll play well into any intestate succession planning that I'm sure we're going to go into later on the episode. But that's funny. You know, a funny story regarding Dominican baseball players. Years ago, my wife and I were buying. We're big fans of the God, what's that? It'll come to me. It's some vacuum cleaner that's with water and it's great for allergies. I forgot the name. Okay, it'll come to me. Anyways, so the guy comes
Shark?
over. No, it'll come to me. So the guy comes over. It's an expensive vacuum cleaner. So they're giving the whole lady the updated. We're talking to him, and then he starts bringing out, oh yeah, my nephew is a Major League Baseball player. And I'm like, no way. He goes, yeah, from Dominican Republic, the whole same Dominican Republic, story, or all the great baseball players a lot of them are birthed over there. They come over here. And he was telling us a funny story. He says that when he first came over here, he was playing for the majors. Man, I think it was a red uniform. It could have been was it Cincinnati or I forgot who it was. Anyways, so he's showing pictures, so it's legit, right? So he's pictures with them and him and in his uniform, the whole deal. And he's saying that when he comes over, he starts playing professional baseball. And he signed a million. I don't know what it was, but it was like millions. Whatever the contract was, it was millions. And he says that he kept on. He was the only uncle here in the States, and he kept on calling him and said, "Hey, can you send me some money?" And he's like, "Okay." In the beginning, he would send him like whatever it was, a small denomination, say, "I need some more money." And he's like, "Hey, are you supposed to be getting paid a lot of money? What's going on with your money?" He's like, haven't been paid." He's like, "What do you mean you haven't been paid?" So they started doing some research, whatever. So apparently they're giving him paper checks and he doesn't know what it is. And he's getting the checks, putting them in his locker every time they give him a check. He just put it in there, had no concept of like a bank account. Like there was no one guiding him on that front, right? So like he was just putting this. I'm like, dude, there's no way this guy had an agent, right? Because otherwise, the agent's gonna be looking for his money, right, Trevor? And so I'm like, are you serious? Yeah. And then I think I forgot if I tell you a number, I'd be lying, but it was he said the number. He was like, man, if they did the total, it was like such a ton of money in there. And he was wondering, why does this guy keep on asking me for money? He's a major baseball player, So there's that.
Yeah, many years ago there was a movie that came out called Azúcar, and it was documenting. It was a docudrama, but it kind of documented a fictitious player from the Dominican Republic and talked about what it was like to be not only a person of color in the United States, but a person of color from a different country and a person of color who has no knowledge of English. I mean, it's like it's the hardest thing to watch, especially when you send that person to, again, like Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you since I think we're all cut from the same cloth. You play how tall are you, Trevor?
5'6".
Oh my God, you play basketball. That's awesome. I always thought that that height requirements and what you can and can't do based on your height or whatever is just a construct, right? It's just a limiting belief in my opinion, right? So I've always been of the same cloth. It doesn't matter to me. I'm still gonna do it. My kid's the same way. My youngest, he was all of what is it, all county linebacker in high school, vicious, and he's like 5'7", something like that. And but he'd be the one player that when you hear these stories common, I'm sure it's probably it's synonymous with what you did, because I'm sure you just didn't land on the basketball court and say, look, I'm so great. I'm sure you worked hard at it. He would stay after practice by himself running sprints and drills and 1 yard. So the first time he comes onto the field, when he was trying out, they look at him, it was a high school and he went to a charter school, so he had his pick of which high school to go around. So he picked whatever high school. He starts playing football there, and he comes out, and then you see the kids looking at him like, and he's always been strong, like, and really strong, but he's not like a 6 foot linebacker that you would expect, or 5'11", or whatever it is. And man, when he started laying out these monsters, and I mean monsters, they were like, who is this kid? And then it goes back to the story you're talking about, Dominican baseball players. I've often thought about that context and other contexts where I really don't think, I think that inherent physical ability is important, but I think when you just give yourself to whatever that goal and that task is 100%, and these Dominican baseball players, they're doing this since they were like 3 years old, living in the streets. So they live that every day. So I think that speaks to why they're so good. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that applies to everyone, right? If you focus on one thing, you can only get better at it, right? So I think it's pretty cool. Was that your case, Trevor? Are you a super physical specimen that is good at any physical activity?
I'm coordinated. I have good
Yeah.
hand-eye coordination. So hitting a baseball was easy, but I I because of my size, I mean, I was disadvantaged in a game like basketball, and also in something like baseball where I can't produce the same power and the same swing velocity as someone who's 6'3" and 220 pounds. So it was just a lot of effort, skill, and repetition. I used to take a tennis ball in my parents' garage. I'm sure they loved it, and they'd pull their cars out of the garage to give me a little space, and I would throw the tennis ball against the wall and then go and get it barehanded with my left hand to work on fielding.
Mm.
That kind of stuff.
That's super cool. That's super cool. And how far did you take sports? Just through high school, or?
Yes, with an asterisk. Another funny, silly story of like, I don't know, every there are people that have like a reckless belief in themselves, right? And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And one of those things that having the reckless belief in myself led me to do was try to walk on to the Cal baseball team, like a big time program, national university, top 10 team in the country, with little to no formal experience playing baseball. I don't even think I played on the high school team. I played recreationally. I played tennis in high school. I played basketball. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna walk on. So I'll never forget. I I walk into the head coach's office, Dave Esker. He's won like a national championship, and he's sitting at his desk, and he goes, "Yeah, what can I do for you?" And I say, "Yeah, I'd like to play on the baseball team." And he goes, "Huh? You have any? What's your experience? You play none?" And he probably looked at me. He goes, "What are you? 108 pounds or whatever?" And he goes, "How about this?" And I don't know if maybe he was just thinking it was going to be entertaining. He goes, "We're actually having a practice today with our team. Why don't you come out and practice with us?" I'm like, "What? Okay." So I run home. I go to the store. I buy a pair of cleats. And if for anyone that's worn cleats before, you know, the first time you wear them, you end up with blisters really bad because you had to break them in. So I go out there, it's 1:30, and I head out to the main diamond, and it's just me and 2 other guys. I go, where's the rest of the team? And he said, oh, well, I just wanted to have you take infield with our starting shortstop and our starting second baseman. So I go, okay, great. So long story short, and I'll tell you the punchline in a second. Basically, the practice was we took grounders from shortstop and second base, and we had to throw it, just normal infield practice. First guy throws it. Second guy, me, I'm like trying to launch a grenade, right? And I remember the coach, I heard him from behind. He goes, "Hey, don't hurt yourself, Rose." Right? He could tell, right? I'm really trying to keep up with these guys. Well, the punchline is, several years later, the shortstop ended up winning a World Series as a superstar with the St. Louis Cardinals. His name was Alan Craig. And the second baseman ended up playing in the major leagues for a year or two with the New York Mets, Josh Satin. So I walk in to the office, I ask if I can try out, and he makes me take infield with Major League Baseball superstars. Anyways, I didn't make the team. But it was a lot of fun. And those are just like these silly things that you never forget.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I bet one thing you're not going to live with is any regret that you didn't go for it.
Oh yeah.
If you wouldn't have walked into that coach's office, I can guarantee you right now, you'd say, you know what? One time I really wanted to do this and I just didn't, but it's great. And that's a great way to live. You know what I mean? Not that everything is going to be a home run, but good for you.
I was probably like Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite, where he's like, I used to be the quarterback, and he'd like throw meat.
It's like, and it's like Jerry.
He's the van like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Jerry doesn't have any limiting beliefs except one. He's always wanted to be like a Rockette. Is that what you told me? You wanted to be a Rockette and dance in New York with the Rockettes? I'm like, dude, just go for it.
There's a side of me that's still waiting to come out. One of my cousins actually said that to me, dude, why don't you go ahead and just come out already? And I'm like, I know, I just keep holding back, but one day I hope so. Anyway.
That's funny. Hey, so before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the Unleashed episode, first of the year, by the way. So I wanted to give some time for all the studio audience to come in and pile in. I think we have a pretty packed house today, so I think we're good. And I wanted to go around real quick and kind of, Jerry, don't laugh at our audience. Why is he laughing at our audience? We have such a massive green room and such amazing food in there that it takes so much time to get all the special VIPs and all that. It's a long story. We'll get into it some other time. Anyways, so Trevor, 2 questions. Tell us a win, tell us a loss from last year, and tell us what you expect, 1 word or maybe a 2-word phrase of what you want to say what this year is going to be. So a win and a loss from last year, and then fast forward to January 2025. And if we ask you this question, Trevor, give us a word or maybe 2 words to describe 2024. What would that be?
So I guess a big win for me is just finding, taking great strides last year to have a balance between my personal and my business life. And by that, I found a lot more ways to be very present with my 2 daughters who are 5 and 6, and really try to enjoy the time that I spend with them, because I noticed that I would get home and be tired and probably not be as interested in the things that they wanted me to be interested in, and that kind of broke my heart. So I've been a much better dad, better husband, and I'm a lot more focused at work, because I know that there's with fewer hours. I also learned that when we have a smaller time frame to get things done, we're much more efficient. Like you have 3 tasks, you have 1 hour. Whereas if you have 4 hours to do 3 tasks, it's amazing how they spread out over the 4 hours. So that was a big win. A loss, I don't know.
Well, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as it sounds. I mean, like, did you have a goal or something where maybe you had to pivot a little bit that you didn't complete it last year, or something that you're going to refine this year?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like a full stop loss, like, oh my God, just some, just like a little bump in the road that you had to pivot or something you're going to refine this year, something like that.
Yeah, and it's related to one of my goals for 2024, which is that I had endeavored to actually get a book published last year. I was using a lot of the content that I use on our social media site. We call it Wednesday Wisdom, and they're just questions that we get regarding estate planning from clients, simple questions and answers. And I was going to put that into a book form. And the bad news is I didn't get it finished last year, but the good news is I'm close. I've got a lot of the content done, and I'm really in the last steps towards like getting the content finalized and actually getting it turned into a typeset book, whether it's an ebook or published or not. So I think that's what I want to do this year. I also want to add a third attorney. I'll put that into the world because 3 years ago we were lucky enough to add a second attorney, Megan McCall. She's amazing. And that was kind of our process of building our life, designing our life the way we wanted it to, where we could go spend time, 3 weeks in Europe and still work a few hours a day and still be productive. And I couldn't do that if I didn't have someone to cover me. And just being the only attorney, there's a lot of pressure there whenever clients have big issues and you're the one that has to, you're the final buck. So and I've got someone that we've been grooming as a third attorney that has done 2 summers with us as a law student and will be taking the bar this summer. So fingers crossed, January 2025, I'm hoping that we have 3 attorneys and we're organically expanding, and it's giving me more space to do the things that I want to do creatively, like whether it's music or writing or traveling. That's my next step.
Striptease, I'm sure that's in. There's a
Hey,
lot
Trevor, do you
of activity there.
Hey, Trevor, just out of curiosity, do you are you into quantum physics? Do you know who Joe Dispenza is?
So first question, yes, I'm interested in quantum physics. Second question, I may have seen some clips from him, but I can't recognize the name.
That's good. 'Cause you said a few things that were cut from the same cloth. I'm like, oh, he's one of us. Okay.
I
I
might,
like
yeah,
it. I like
I
it.
might
Yeah,
be.
when you put things out into the universe, you manifest. And I'm a so believer in that. It's amazing. I even took a real hard stance at the end of last year. I always believed in that. Whatever you put onto universe, you manifest. It could be negative, it could be whatever. So if you spend your life, if I'm buddies with Trevor, which I hopefully we'll be buddies now, especially since you see I'm the more energetic, more personable, better looking cousin, you may just want to not be friends with Jerry anymore. So that's going to be understandable, right, Jerry? You're good with that.
Usually the way it is.
Yeah, so I'm even to the point now that I'm taking it to an extreme. So like, I don't want to hear not any negativity, but anything at all. Like in other words, something has to be spoken about, we speak about. But for example, I don't want to hear comments from anyone around me who's like, "Oh my God, I can't afford." I'm like, "Oh, stop! Don't enter that into my programming, okay? Because that's a limiting belief. I can't. Woe is me. Look at what's happening to me in my life because so I've been eliminating people, not in a bad way, but individuals, and it's a difference between someone having a good day and a bad day. That's not what I'm talking about, right? We're friends. We're gonna have peaks and valleys in life. We're gonna have great days. We're gonna have bad days. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm saying those individuals that, unfortunately, from they're programmed to the default of victimization, or look what the world's done to me, or look, I can't get ahead, or that kind of stuff. And I feel that's like the worst type of COVID, the worst type of pandemic, because that spreads. And that's like putting, like right now, that's like Jerry is he's made a huge quantum leaps in his physical transformation. He feels great. That's like right now, if I'm that guy that's always giving him a cheeseburger, making me the cheeseburger, and he's like, dude, I got to get this Carlos out of my life. Every time I'm on this path, and he's poisoning me. So anyways, so I always believed in that. And I think it's super important who you align yourself with, both in business and friendship. And it's okay to not be aligned with someone. It's okay to love them from afar. It's okay to pray for them. It's okay to wish them the best. But I think that all that negativity, even little by little, just resonates. You know what I mean? And I need to preserve the few neurons I have left that are connecting. I need to make sure they continue functioning and get enhanced. So I can't afford. I'm not 20 years old anymore.
Well, and even I think every language even has its own kind of similar, right? Birds of a feather flock together. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres.
That's a beautiful one. That's a, oh my God,
but
absolutely.
it's kind of true. With one exception, I think what you're saying is you're adding a next step to that, which is be proactive about con quién andas, right? Because the saying itself is just like, well, who do you hang out with? But you're saying like, yeah, well, you need to make an actual choice to maybe screen some people out that are not best for your overall well-being.
Yep. And
That's
I think
hard.
life, yeah, I think it is hard, but I think that it comes to a point where I think individuals already know what path if they're aligned, if they're not aligned. And some things, it just happens organically, I think, So anyways, as you can see, I'm super into personal development. I love to see what makes the mind tick and what makes other people tick and productive is just, I really enjoy that, because I'm not there yet. And I love just to learn from others and kind of see what they're, open the hood and see what's in the compartment.
And
Mr.
oh, real quick, I was actually going to make a confession here. A few days ago, I was kind of in like a personal lull, like kind of just figuring stuff out. And I came to that realization that I was just kind of gliding a little bit, and I didn't have like any. I felt like I didn't have any particular at that moment, like purpose or path, or like just you're just kind of going through the motions of life, right? Um, and in the past few days, actually, incidentally, I've been thinking about like, no, I need to legitimately set goals and move myself in a direction, or else you end up in a little bit of a rut. And so I just appreciate that you mentioned that because it's been on my mind recently.
Yeah, it was like you said, so a few things. I'm like, hey, all right. All right, now to my great looking, super personable, amazing, over the top, beautiful cousin, Jerry. A win and a loss from last year. And if today is January 5, 2025, what word or two words would you describe 2024 for you?
Oh man, I didn't know I was going to get a turn around the table on this topic, so I wasn't really that prepared, but I think I can muster. Um, you know, let's start with the loss for last year. A couple of big family challenges were traumatic, and we found ourselves in a real crisis with the close family member, and we're on the better side of that right now, and things are looking up, and we're excited. And thank you, Carlos, for always being there for me. Trevor, be the same thing. Trevor has probably knows a little bit of what I'm talking about because Trevor is connected to my family in so many ways. So he knows all the players, but again, super happy that we're on the other side of that. The win for last year is that even with that or prior to that, I was able to accomplish challenging physical things in the attempt to summit Mount Whitney in the snow and doing some big hikes and some self-imposed challenges and goals that some were met and some came up short. But I love the journey of trying, and Trevor will tell you, he's known me forever, that there's never a lack of will. And that's one thing that I've always been proud of about myself. So looking forward to taking that energy into 2024, pardon me, and 2025, but have some big goals coming up for this year. One thing that I am going to do in 2024 that I've never done is I'm going to take an entire month off. More than likely going to travel around the US for that month. I do see some Europe in there, and definitely there's already a trip booked to Maui. And so a lot of travel. Susan's word for the year, my wife's word for the year is experiences. So I'm going to make sure that I don't fall short on supporting her goals. And for me, my phrase for the year, Carlos, is the phrase that our grandfather used to say to all of us, and Trevor will know what this means, is called deja la gente. Deja la gente just translates to let people be. And I think the more I'm able to let people be and stop forcing myself on them, the happier I'm going to ultimately be. And meet people where they're at. I think it's important for me to learn to meet others where they're at. So that was it, man.
That was awesome.
And I want to also highlight that because I'm not an attorney, I can say that in a very short period of time. Carlos, you're surrounded by attorneys. How do you get a word in?
It's challenging. It's challenging. It's challenging, but they're very articulate, you know. So you have
For the
to,
record, we actually do most of our projects on a fixed fee basis. So the more I talk, the more I'm diluting my profit.
Oh, because you're
yeah,
fixed. You're not hourly. Wow.
Yeah, I don't get paid by the word like like most traditional attorneys.
wow,
That I never thought of that. That is wow, the things that these guys think about, huh, Carlos?
it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy, you
it's
know.
crazy. You know, you talk to some of these attorneys that I've had the pleasure to talk to before who are billing $1,000 an hour. Holy, you just want to listen to them because it's so beautiful, everything that comes out of their mouth. But you're paying for every word.
Every
Yeah,
6 minutes, you'll if you listen closely, there's a little ding.
Oh.
that's true. You know, it's
Carlos, why don't I flip the coin on you and what do you have going on? What are your win losses and what's your power word for 2024?
hmm,
Unleashed.
unleashed. I think that 2023 was very eye-opening for me, right? I've always been family first. I've been very faithful. My faith has been what's carried me through difficult
I
times
want a clarification on faithful. To who?
in every context, in
Thank
every
you.
context of the word,
In
in the religious form, in the physical form, in the metaphysical form, you
the
know,
mutual aid form.
in the quantum form, and every form. So but I think that even at my age, you know, and Trevor, we can talk about age. How old are you?
38.
Shit.
Holy,
Okay.
Trevor's 38. I thought he was like 34 still.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
man. Dude, what? Can I ask you a question? If it's not Inisham, you got another young guy on here, bro. You're making us look like crap, Jerry.
Can't keep bringing in young guys. That's just wrong.
No more guests below the age of 70, period, for the rest of the year.
That's the only way we're gonna look good.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, oh man, Jerry and Carlos are doing something different. So I think it's life is, you know, constant lessons learned, constant pivoting, being malleable, this and that. But I think that my biggest lessons learned this year, I don't know if it's a win or a loss, but maybe it's somewhere in between where, you know, I've had a tendency all my life, like not to save people, but for example, if I have an opportunity, I'd be like, hey, Trevor, man, I think you'd be phenomenal for this. Not to work, if something can benefit you, I want to help you. You know, if Trevor, you have this amazing skill set and you're not really where you want to be in your life, but I see that you have an amazing skill set to or aptitude to do something, I'll be like, hey, Trevor, listen, I had this opportunity and I'm very persuasive. And I felt that my power of persuasion and trying to help people has put me in situations where it's been a loss. Do you know what I mean? And then it goes back to your point, which that was very poignant, what you just said, was meet people where they are. So I need to learn how to meet people where they are and fucking leave them there. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean like be what they are and then that's it, you know, and I'm focusing my impact on those that deserve that other above and beyond. And you have to understand that people have to find their path in life. It's something one of the biggest things I learned this year. You have to let people find their path. And I think when someone is not happy where they are, or if they have to hit rock bottom in whatever scenario or context that may look like, I think that then they'll come back stronger, right? Because you know, Jerry, the transformation you made wasn't because you were happy with your physical self, with your health. It wasn't like, man, I'm on top of the world. Let me just change this up. No, you felt like, you know what? I want to lose some weight. I want to get healthy. I want to run. I want to summit that mountain. So you had things. You had to be in a certain place to aspire to those things, right? So I have to understand that everyone's on their own particular journey and that I need to just, you know, just hold back a little bit in that regard of like, hey, you know what, I think you'd be, and then find some other way to support them. You know what I mean? And just let them find their way. Um, what else? I learned a lot about family. I've learned a lot about loyalty, both in good and bad aspects. And but we're blessed, you know. Like I always say, all those that I love and care about are healthy. Everything else has a solution, so I really don't have any problems in the greater scheme of things, you know. I already shared this with you, Jerry. I think if it would be January 5th, 2025, I think I would like to have said, or hopefully I'll be able to say, that I leveled up in every category. So whether it be health, whether it be nutrition, whether it be business, things like that, I think I'd want to say that I leveled up in every department. And hopefully it'll be an exponential leveling, but at least I don't want to be any sort of reversal or taking any steps backwards. you know. And there's a lot of things. It's funny you say that, Trevor, about focusing, and what Trevor mentioned earlier, that's called the Parkinson's theory, right? Where it's the time it takes work to be conducted is the time allotted for that work. So if I give you a project, Jerry, in by the end of January 2024, I mean by December 2024, can you have this project done? For the most part, most people will start working on it on November, right?
Yeah.
So, but if I tell you to do it in 2 months, you're going to get that done in 2 months. So that's interesting. And I've been reading this book. It's my second time through it. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport, which is so amazing. And it made me think of it when Trevor mentioned that, to be able to go on vacation and still have a productive impact, but enjoy your life. So that book, the premise of that book, it focuses and highlights different individuals, successful individuals, from artists to writers to, I mean, it really runs the gamut, and how they apply deep work to what they get done, and why they're able to produce such a volume of work and still have a life. Do you know what I mean? And there's different ways that looks. And to me, that was very impactful. And I've applied a lot of principles last year, and I'm really excited to continue that forward into the new year. And it's funny, we all have similar bucket lists. Like I haven't told you this, because I have a book half written for like about 5 years already, and I just never squeeze the trigger, right? And I've have a ton of short stories and poems and stuff. So I'm just trying to hopefully get in tune with those things, right? Because I don't want to live with any regret. So like they said,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, when we go on vacation, my wife likes to just not be involved in any kind of work, and she works with me, much like Jerry and Susan. She's kind of our office administrator, and she's the superstar and makes everything, makes us all look good.
Yeah.
But and this also relates to meeting people where they're at. Sometimes she doesn't understand that for me, I'm happy and I feel realized and productive if I do go on vacation and work for an hour or two. And actually, because of the concept of, having a limited amount of time to do things, I think if you're on vacation and you're like, look, I'm gonna get up while you guys are all sleeping and I'm gonna work an hour. Maybe you do what you normally do in 3 or 4 hours, and then everyone's awake. You feel great. It's just that's what I like to do. And when we went to Italy last summer, because my wife's Italian and her family's in Italy, uh, I I found a way to still keep the practice going and work about 2 to 3 hours a day, and then I still had the other 13 waking hours to be on vacation. And to me, that was a perfect split. So
Nirvana.
yeah, I loved it, and a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, why do you want to do a little bit of work? But if I don't, it's just I feel like I'm not, or maybe I feel like I'm stagnant. Like Carlos said, like we want to keep improving, right? And if I feel like I'm not moving the business part of my identity forward, then I feel like
Yeah.
I'm losing
You,
ground
you,
and
you
my
just
goals.
reminded me of Gene. Trevor knows I talk often to Carlos about one of my best friends, along with your mother, is Gene. And it was on one of those walks where I came to the conclusion that I didn't need to be in the business, that I need to be in the periphery of the business. And what you just said, Trevor, is exactly where I've come to because of that conversation with Gene, which is, how do I work on the business from a periphery, and I can be anywhere in the world and work for an hour, 2 hours a day, or 8 if I feel like working 8 hours, or 12 if I feel like. I mean, yesterday I must have worked 9 straight hours without a break, but I had an amazing time, and it was beautiful and perfect. And today I think I'm gonna do this for 6-7 hours. I have video podcast interviews to do. I think I have 6 of them today, back to back, and I'm having the time of my life because it's intentional. But then, in a couple of weeks, I'll be in Maui, and I still want to be able to do a podcast from Maui, and I still want to be able to do things before Susan is up and running. And again, I love what you said of feeling realized. Like, I feel accomplished, and like I did something. I feel accomplished when, like you guys, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I put an hour into a book that I'm writing right now, and what does that look like? How does it materialize? The book is about my upbringing and my life, and it's in some of his challenges. But the reason I'm doing that because it's also cathartic and allows me to process some of the things that I haven't gotten out yet. And the only way you get these things accomplished is literally by doing. They're not by perseverating or just kind of sitting with a thought and thinking that one day maybe you should. Carlos always says that so generously about the way that I like to do things, which is I like to do things by doing. Trevor is very much the same way. Carlos is identically the same way. As you just throw it. So the three of us really have that in common. I'm glad we came to this space where the three of us get to talk, and I can see easily that we'll meet in person one day, and it'd be a lot of fun, man, to get together, whether it's in the Miami side of the world or in the Napa side of the world, because yeah, it'd be amazing.
I've still never done Miami, so
Really?
Yeah, Carlos has an amazing vacation rental over there, so he'd gladly set you up, and you might see Miami in a different way after you experience it that way. So
Yep. Yeah, we have a 5.0 rating as host, just FYI. My wife does an amazing job managing that, so
super host. So
put it this way, it's so good. We had someone check in yesterday, and sometimes we gotta do the cleaning crew bangs in, ghosts my wife, doesn't even show up. So what do you do, right? So these people are flying in from Aruba, the guests that were checking in. She spends a whole day by herself there, getting everything ready, that when the people walked in, they sent me a message through the Airbnb app, like about 11 something PM, and said something along the lines, "This is amazing." They're like blown away. She goes all out. They stocks them with food. I mean, above and beyond, So yeah, Trevor, that was just a little pitch. So you have where to come.
I was just picking up on that. ABC.
Always be closing.
My God. Hey, it's in our blood, Trevor. We can't help it. It's a disease.
Yeah, bro.
ABCDE, always be closing deals every day.
Yeah, wow.
I just came up with that right now.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. I wanted to add a couple letters.
He's such a linguist. So now before we start on what I thought we only have like 10 minutes left, just so you know. So we better get on something here. Trevor, can you give my cousin a little flair of your linguist skills? I would just throw this at you if you wouldn't indulge me. The same expression from a Puerto Rican, a Cuban, a Dominican, and an Argentinian. The same expression from those four countries.
It's hard with the Dominican, Cuban, and Puerto Rican because there are subtle differences, as you guys know.
Excuse me.
No, they're not subtle.
They're not subtle. Excuse me.
For example, the word carne, right? In Cuba be carne, in the Dominican be carne. In Puerto Rico, it could be any variation of that because you do have carne. I guess there's different countries, but you probably want to hear a whole sentence or something like
a whole sentence, and maybe those are not the right countries. Maybe I should be a little bit more empathetic and give you a little bit more latitude because maybe those are too close. Maybe go Cuban, Dominican, and Spaniard.
Mexico, Argentina, Colombia. You want to throw them in there?
Yeah, go there. Okay, those are strong ones.
Okay, give me a sentence in English.
Yo voy.
That's Spanish.
Oh, in English. Oh,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't
sorry.
matter.
Welcome. Okay, here you go. Welcome to my country.
No, that's too easy. Go longer sentence.
Welcome to my country. You fine looking, beautiful podcast host. There you go. How's that?
How about just fine looking person, right? Because I don't even podcastero. I guess that'd be the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Podcastero, I like it. Podcastero, órale.
Pues bienvenido a mi país, podcastero. So that's Mexico. Bienvenido a mi país, podcastero tan guapo. Eso es de España. Bienvenido a mi país, que sos un podcastero increíblemente guapo.
Dale, Argentina.
Bienvenido a mi país, que que usted es un podcastero increíble y tan bonito, bien guapo. I don't know if that's a little
That
more
was
Cuban or Puerto
Dominican.
Rican.
That had no. I think
Dominican.
I think I had Dominican a little bit
Oh,
at the end.
but
Guapo,
also at the end of the sentence there has to be a eh? Like
guapo.
que tiene que vaciar la manguera, and there's a little bit of a
Yeah.
y luego los puertorriqueños tienen más como que pausan entre los varios pensamientos así y tienen un cantito así que más entre las varias palabras van pensando y luego al final de la cosa, no, eso fue más dominicano.
Oye, Trevor,
Oye,
van pensando o se pierden?
Oh,
oh,
oh.
but, but,
He
pero
says that because he knows I'm half Puerto Rican.
¿Van pensando o se confunden? I
Oh
don't know.
God.
no lo sé.
Bendito, no me hablen así. Déjenme tranquilo por acá.
Oye,
No,
déjale toda esta locura, caballero.
the
Oye,
best.
compadre.
No, but Colombia is very interesting too because it has such a rich diversity, right? You've got the Caribbean coast, Pacific coast. You've got los paisas de Medellín que vos no sabes, hombre, right? That they're all over the place. So Colombia is a place that I like to go visit and hang out too.
Colombia's
All right,
awesome.
I'm going to interject.
Good. Let's go. Let's go, Jerry. Let's go.
It's time to interject because I have a feeling if anybody is tuned into this, they're not here for a Latin American. I think I might have to edit that burp out.
No, leave it in.
Leave it in. Okay. So with that being said, I just had a protein drink. So excuse me. So with that being said,
Join us for real estate, for law, for
I
incontinence.
want to talk about trust, estates, and wills. But here's the issue that we have Carlos, the beautiful Carlos from Miami, Florida, and you have Jerry and Trevor who are in Napa Valley, California. Is there any way that you could speak to this in a macro national way, kind of protect yourself, Trevor, that we don't put you in a box, or
No,
should we stay in
yeah.
the California box?
Well, I think that I'm glad you said that because, Jerry, unlike my other co-host, I prepared for this interview.
Ooh.
So I was looking at the intestate succession from California compared to Florida, and it's vastly different, right? And I just glanced at it. So in California, I don't know if this is correct or not, Trevor, but let's suppose and intestate, obviously, can you tell I don't want to speak from authority. Can you tell the audience what intestate means?
Yeah, intestate for people who don't know better could sound like
could sound like what Jerry's going through right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could sound like you're lacking certain pieces of anatomy, but that is not what it means. It means that you actually have died without a will. Was that the appropriate way to say that, Jerry? Because I know that we're in mixed company, so I'll try to say that professionally.
That was beautiful.
So intestate means you die without a will, and if you don't ever do a formal estate plan or a will or a trust, then the state where you reside has its own default laws, and it says exactly who's going to inherit what type of property. And one of the big factors, as you might imagine, was the person married, can have a big impact on that. Did the person have children? That has a big impact. And also, were your assets community property or separate property, which I don't know if Florida is a community property state like California is.
Well, that's one of the distinctions, right? Because over there, it is the property. I was looking at the flow chart. So, are you married? Yes. Okay, it goes down a level. Do you have children? Yes. But in California, it was interesting because when you have children, then if I'm correct me if I'm mistaken, as you go down another level, then the wife has to split 50% and then divide the rest with the children. And in Florida, it automatically, even if they do have children together, it automatically goes 100% to the wife. And then if she passes, then it'll go down to the children. So they're not included until the couple is completely out of the scene,
Yeah. So what happens in California, because we have community property, is there's two different rules. So the first thing you have to look at is, was the asset community property or separate property of the deceased spouse? If it's community property, then even if there's children, it automatically goes to the other spouse. If there's no will, that's the default. If it's separate property, then then the analysis gets even wonkier. It's like, if now it's how many children do you have? If you have one child and one spouse, then they split it 50-50, your separate property assets. If you have more than one child, then 2/3 of your separate property go to the children and 1/3 goes to the spouse. So that's just how the default breaks down for separate property assets. Although in reality, the analysis for married people tends to just be all of it goes to the spouse, like in practice, because the presumption is all assets that were acquired during marriage are community assets. And let's be honest, most people go into a marriage they don't really have much anyways. So most of the stuff that you would have acquired is during your marriage. So typically a married couple, all of the assets will end up with the spouse through intestacy, with a couple of exceptions. Anything that you inherit is considered separate property unless you actually proactively commingle it, right? By joining it or adding your spouse to title. So if you inherit assets, if you receive them by way of gift, that's also considered separate property. And of course, any assets that you owned prior to marriage goes into the marriage as separate, but that's not the end of the analysis, right? Because if let's say you have a separate property and you get married and there's a mortgage on it, and then you're married for 20 years, and then you use all of your joint income to pay down your separate property mortgage. Well, your spouse, every single mortgage payment is acquiring a fractional community interest in that property.
Mm.
So it can sometimes get very complicated, as you can imagine, in death without a will, or also in a divorce context, because now you have to hire forensic accountants, and the lawyers start arguing over which piece actually belonged to this spouse and which piece belonged to that spouse. So gladly and hopefully, Valentina will never divorce me.
So all that being said, the biggest takeaway is speak to an expert like Trevor, because it's a wicked web if you try to traverse this space on your own, going to YouTube or Googling things and thinking you have your estate set up properly and all these different components and variables. So that's thank goodness for people like Trevor that can be here to help the regular Joe Schmoes like us navigate these spaces, because once you're gone, you have no further input, right? So
That's one of the risks of the legal Zoom, right? Like
yeah.
because
Yeah.
when people want to do it themselves, some things it's understandable to do it yourself and save cost. Estate planning, I really don't think it's one of those things, because you have no guarantee that it's ever done correctly while you're alive. And by the time you find out and everything gets administered and executed, it's too late to change it. So you never have that peace of mind of knowing that it was done correctly by a professional, who of course has malpractice liability insurance too. So to the extent there ever is a mistake, unfortunately in 12 years I've never had a claim made, but that's one of the benefits to using a professional is if there was a mistake and my kids need to get it fixed, I can at least just have the insurance pay out the mistake.
Trevor, what is what's the, without having to give specific numbers, what's the pricing, or how much can individuals expect to pay for estate planning? Do you base, is it the flat fee based on assets, a percentage of assets, or what's the structure like over there in California?
Do we have different plans that we offer?
Yes. Do you gouge the rich?
No, we can't. And we're actually, we don't look at the value of the estate. We look at our specific things that are going to make our job more complicated or complex in creating the estate plan. And a trust doesn't become more complex just because you're worth more, although it could if there's estate tax planning that needs to happen, which by the way, it's currently $13 million per person is the federal exemption amount. So a married couple can be worth $26 million or less and not even have to worry about estate taxation, at least until 2 years from now, when that number will go down to somewhere about 15 million per couple is the estimate. But what we look at are things like, how many pieces of real property are there? Because to add a piece of property into a trust, you actually have to do a separate trust transfer grant deed. You have to do a preliminary change of ownership report that gets submitted. You have to record it with the county. So there's more work and hard costs associated with each additional property. So that goes into a quote. Are there business interests involved, like corporations, LLCs? We have to assign those businesses into the trust, so that'll add more complexity and work. And then also, what are the actual specific distribution provisions or clauses in the document that might be custom or a little more out of the ordinary?
Guys, can I dumb this down a little bit? I think we need to
Yeah.
dumb this down.
Yeah, sure.
But let's
I was about to ask
Well-
him if the estate planning transfers also to succession planning for the business owners. So let's dumb it down. What happens if John dies, who runs the company? You account for that in the estate planning, is that right, Trevor? So if there's a family business, and whoever runs that business, husband or wife, whoever it may be, they're no longer there. If they don't have that estate planning as within part of the greater scheme of their estate planning, they're going to have a problem, right?
I'm glad you bring that up, because technically there are two distinct types of planning, and one would be, did we account for that asset, the ownership interest, and put it into the trust, so that we can privately have the business succession happen without having to go to court. Because if you don't put a business asset into a trust, it could be subject to probate, and now you've got court supervised receivers and things going on to manage the company, which could completely dissolve or end a company, right? So yes, you've got the estate planning side, and then as a separate matter, if the business would hire me to deal with the succession planning internally, which is when this person dies, who's going to take over, how are we going to keep the business alive, is there a buy-sell agreement, and that kind of stuff. So they do go together, but they're not always treated together, because technically estate plan is the private person is my client, and the succession plan is the business would be the client. So we treat them as two separate matters.
So you clearly didn't dumb it down enough. I just wanted to ask one simple question because you're losing me. Who should be getting a trust or a will?
Okay.
And what is the difference between a trust and a will?
Okay. I will explain this in hopefully terms that everyone can understand.
That I can understand.
No, and I apologize if I'm being wordy. So who should have an estate plan? I think everyone who's alive. I know it's a silly answer, but even if you don't have a lot of assets, doing a simple will at least nominates who does get what you have, and who's going to be in charge of handling it, like from the executor portion, and who does your final tax returns. Like, that's important. Who should have a trust? I'll speak to Californians. There's three big people. Like, if I were a doctor and I were trying to prescribe like who needs a trust, the first big one is, do you own real estate? Because of the value of real estate is such that it is automatically higher than the amount necessary to force a probate. So if you own real estate, you need a trust to avoid probate. If you have minor kids, even if you don't have a lot, in California, if you inherit more than $10,000 as a minor, that gets frozen in a court supervised custodianship. So like, if you have life insurance, you have a retirement plan, you want to create the trust, name the trust as a beneficiary of those proceeds, and then have someone privately manage those for your minor children. And then the last one is a business owner, incidentally, because businesses should be transferred through a trust, should not be subject to probate. And you also don't want a business to just legally die at the death of the owner. And in California, if it's just a sole proprietorship or a partnership, it dies with the owner, which is another reason why people should have an LLC or a corporation, right? Formally register them with their state secretary of state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one of the things that I found interesting, and I don't know if you could speak to this, Trevor. Carlos and I have a cousin that's near and dear to us, and we love her. She has a lot of real estate experience, and in the real estate world, from an attorney's perspective, she's a real estate attorney over there. But in Florida, real estate attorneys are primarily escrow officers here. I know that our cousin has gotten into things that are a lot more complex than just doing an escrow, but they're sort of closing agents, right, if you will. And one thing that she said to me early on, shortly after you completed my trust the first time. Oh, we don't do that. We don't do that here. We don't find that necessary to do that here in Florida. And I argued that why would you not have a trust and a will and all these things set up? I haven't talked to her in a while. I don't know if she's changed her position on that, but I'm just curious is if there's a reason why anyone in the country wouldn't have a will.
So I think, well, I guess you could argue that if you're happy with the default provisions of your state through intestacy, and if you set up your estate in such a way where under your state laws, either like a probate wasn't going to be necessary, right? Not everyone needs a trust because some people only have assets that you can assign beneficiaries on, like a pay on death bank account, or maybe there's a brokerage account at Morgan Stanley where you can just say, at my death, I want a POD beneficiary to my daughter. And if that's all you have, then maybe they say, I'm fine with that. I don't really have much else other than just my miscellaneous personal belongings in my house.
Yeah.
And I only have one child, so I don't really feel like the need to nominate an executor.
Yeah.
So I think that there are certainly cases where not everybody needs to do it formally. Or there might be a situation where someone at least needs to have a will, but maybe they don't need a trust.
Yeah.
You know, there are other ways to avoid trust. Like one of the bad ways we see, unfortunately, is like adding a child as a joint tenant on a piece of property. And there's probably 7 to 10 legal property tax like liability reasons not to do that. But sometimes that's just the advice they get, and they do it on their own and never contact the attorney.
It's always great also to, I mean, in my uneducated, humble opinion, it's always great, especially to your point, Trevor, about having real estate and that being one of the biggest catalysts to get a trust or an entity. I think it also helps the individual, at least here in Florida. Speaking of Florida, it helps the individual. There's some positive tax implications for putting it in a trust as well as putting it in a corporation, your real estate holdings. And you also have that buffer of liability, right, between you and whatever happens on that property, and you limit the liability to that specific either trust or LLC that you have that one property in, versus someone suing Jerry Pujals because he has everything under his name, and then everything comes into play. So there's a lot of things. And again, back to my other point, that it's important, this is not something you should legal Zoom. This is something that you have to talk to a professional. And it runs parallel with Jerry and I talk constantly about. Same with real estate. Same with any profession. If you want a professional guidance, you have to talk to a professional because they really know the ins and outs, and you just can't Google this stuff. So if you dislocate your finger like I did a while back, and you get on Google like I did a while back, or YouTube, and figure out how to put it back in place like I did, that's great for YouTube. But anything else, that these major life decisions, financial decisions, let experts like Trevor, navigate and guide you, and you have to just let that happen. Otherwise you're going to be in a situation that you cannot do again, because you're going to be pushing daisies.
One of my favorite questions that I get periodically is, do I need a lawyer for this? And I will tell them that the technical answer is no. But then I'll also say, depending on the situation, I could also make the argument, do I need a surgeon for this?
Yeah.
And then they'll laugh because they get it. They're like, oh, well, I guess technically you could operate on your own arm, but maybe that wouldn't be the best idea. So,
hey, Trevor, I've always had this question concerning attorneys in your field. And I know if you have multiple attorneys in your office, you all have certain plans. But what happens to the solo estate attorney that does, let's say, prepares a will or trust for individuals, and God forbid something happens to that
I'm
attorney?
so glad you asked that.
Yeah, what's the, like, how does that work? And I've always been curious. So if I'm a solopreneur attorney and I'm doing what you do, and I set these things up, and then God forbid something happens to me, and maybe something happens to the individual of the estate, like, what happens? Is there a place that the document is memorialized?
Carlos, let's push him aside for a second, because I've always said, I've been referring Trevor out to my clients for over 10 years. And I've always said to my clients who tell me, oh, I already have a trust attorney, I always ask my clients, how old is he or she? And when they tell me, most of the time is usually they're in their 70s or 80s. They're really knowledgeable. I'm thinking, they're coming to the end. If they go before you, could that be a problem, Trevor?
So in a technical sense, the documents are fine, they're valid, right? They don't become invalid because the person that drafted them dies. The state bar suggests and strongly encourages that we have a succession plan that where there's another attorney who's already involved, just like the trust that we have. You have an executor and a backup, let's say, or a successor trustee. Then that person knows, like, if I die, here's the game plan, here's the prep, here's who you're going to contact, here's the letters you're going to send out, here's how they're going to get copies and or originals of their documents, here's, all that's in place. I'm fortunate that I have a built-in partner here that works with me, and also an estate planning attorney who's excellent. And then I think, oh yeah, going back to Jerry's point though, so like as far as the older, younger one, I think it has more to do with the continuity of the relationship long term, right? Because again, if tomorrow, God forbid, something happened to me, your documents are fine, right? You could technically retrieve your documents, contact another attorney, and have the file transferred over, right? And that's okay. But it's like anything in life, like having a young general practitioner or physician, right? They can follow you and know your family and know your estate and watch you grow and help you build and strategize and plan for years and years and years. And that's my favorite part about only being 12 years into this, is that I've got people that I've worked with since 2013 and 2014, and we just move forward. And I don't plan on retiring anytime soon unless I win the Powerball.
I'm here to tell you that when I'm 105 and you're a mere 92, I'm not referring you anymore.
What if I look really good at 92?
We can revisit that then.
Okay, so you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance.
Okay.
All right, so we've busted out the hour, you guys. We went beyond an hour. I'm sure there'll be an invoice in my mail. Unbelievable. I promised him an hour and we're 14 minutes. Just keep this in, let's keep cost in check here, Carlos.
Hold on. You said, but wait a second. You said Trevor was our first paid advertiser. What?
Oh, he's a sponsor?
It's all right. Well, you know what? How about this? We'll call it even. And I'll waive the 14 minutes pro bono, and you'll waive the advertising.
Wow, we're flush. We're flush.
Thank goodness, because everyone in the studio audience, at least here in Miami, started to get up and leave, but they sat back down. We're good.
This is
good.
perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, Trevor, I can't thank you enough, man. I hope you'd be open to indulging us again, because I this is just the beginning. I think the well of trust and estate planning is very deep, and I'm the guy that trusts that you have many of those answers, and I know that if you don't, you're well read, my friend. You'll go deep in it for us. You've done a beautiful job for me and my family. I do have what I would consider more complex situation than fortunately for a lot of people, because I have kids with disabilities, and you had to dive into an area that I don't know that a lot of attorneys would dive into or even understand, but you do, and I'm very fortunate to have you as a strong part of our life. And the day that I kick the bucket, I definitely need you happy and healthy to help these people navigate. So yeah.
Sí, te quiero, papi. Mwah.
Quiero a ti también.
Hey, Trevor, he's totally glanced over this. Offline, I'll send you my social and my name and address, because Jerry said to make sure that I tell Trevor to add him into your will or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yes. I'll send that to you offline.
Carlos
so you can add me on there. He just acquiesced, so it's official.
Carlos is actually the executive trustee. Trevor, he's going to bump you.
Go for it, man.
Yeah, you need that job.
Being an executor and a trustee is not for the faint of heart. That's another public service announcement. It's make sure you're ready to do it. It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
I would leave you guys by saying, but once you do, the levity that you feel every time you get on an airplane and do things that are that could affect the outcome for your heirs and the people in your life, you feel just a little better about things. I mean, it's really important. And you know, I did this early in my 40s, and I wish I would have done it in my 30s. So
Can I have one more question? Trevor question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Trevor, in California, since, you know, after the advent a long time ago, you know, they implemented in our mortgages a due on sale clause. So if there's any change in transfer and ownership, it automatically accelerates the mortgage. That's pretty much applies to all mortgages now. If you're helping a family with will and estate planning, and you're want to put, let's say, a piece of real estate in a trust or into an LLC or whatever other entity, is there some legal circumvention that can avoid? Is there some kind of exemption for that to not trigger the due on sale clause? Or
Yeah, so the federal regulations do carve out an exception for an owner occupied property. So if it's a primary residence, it's not subject to the due on sale. For all the other properties, I will say this. In 12 or 13 years of doing this, I've never seen it actually triggered, right? Because it's technically the lender has the option, but not the requirement. Having said that, I will tell clients that in a rising interest rate market, be aware that the risk is certainly higher now. Like if you're sitting on a 3% interest rate property, that the lender might say, okay, I'd rather get that money back and lend it out at 7%. So I'm a little bit cautious, knowing that might happen moving forward, but I'm hopeful that they won't, because that will not be a good look for lenders to basically force people into choosing, right? Do I do an estate plan and protect my family in case of my death, or do I just have to die, you know, intestate because I don't want to potentially lose my interest rate?
Right. All right, good. Well, thanks for clearing that up. That's it's always been it's a common question that we get down here, right? And so I think it's important, again, reach out to Trevor. Trevor, let's plug your business over there. Where do they find you? Where do our hundreds and thousands of millions of followers go to see you?
I can put it on the show notes.
Yeah, so My Napa Lawyer is Instagram and Facebook, and website is mynapalawyer.com.
All right, so everyone else, you heard it straight from Trevor, mynapalawyer.com. Reach out to him, let him know we sent you, and you'll get absolutely nothing for free. So just reach out to him, accept awesome information at a very amazing value. So Trevor, you're a great guy.
Please hit subscribe and like, and say nice things about us. And if you don't want to say anything nice, say nothing at all. And we love you all. Thanks for watching. We appreciate all your time. Thank you.
We're out. Unleashed.
Thank you.
See ya.